So currently, I'm the CTO at Banishal. We do environments as a service. So we kind of do the link between DevOps and developers, and we're really passionate about this. And I think I'm in a wonderful place right now. I'm not sure if I'm an ops person or a dev person at heart. I question this about myself, but really, I'm not sure. Because I love both of them. I couldn't imagine my life without either of them. And I've worked as a DevOps, as a system administrator with switches under the table, as a cloud architect, and then as a CTO, which kind of involves everything, really, in a startup company. So that's a bit about myself. So now, tell us a bit about your history and your journey to where you are now.
So I am in a very similar position. I'm somewhere between dev and ops. So probably like right in the sweet spot of DevOps. I've been in IT industry since 2001, so it's like 21 years. Started as developer, Java developer for a very long time, and then I became the developer advocate at JFrog, which does tools for develop for DevOps, right? So this is where the interaction came, and as you, I love the space. I love helping both ops people to get better in what they do and developers to solve their problems by using DevOps and by working with ops people and by actually having DevOps happen. So this is me.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you. And I saw that you worked in like a lot of different environments with different cultures. You worked in Europe, in Israel, in America. And tell us a bit about, what were maybe the most interesting things or challenges that you encountered.
This is fascinating, and it's a great opportunity for me to plug one of my favorite books of all time called The Culture Map by Irene Mayer.
Yeah.
Um, uh, it's it's the difference between cultures is fascinating, is fun, but it also very important to understand and know.
Mhm.
And me myself, it took me a very long time to understand that people that look the same, maybe talk the same or more or less, but think in completely different terms and can behave completely differently, and you cannot actually kind of imply or guess what people are thinking because they
Yep.
are so different from you because of culture. This is very important and fascinating differences. And on my Twitter like account that you can see, my Twitter handle is right. Here we go, right here. You can see my pinned tweet is a chart from the culture map about how different we all are, and this is like a warning for all of us, for everybody, that we really need to learn about it and to understand it, and it will make the world a better place
Yep.
only if we will assume that people from different cultures are very different.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree with you. So in Banishal, we started at the start of in Romania, and we grew since then and started hiring in the US. And at first, it was a shock. It was like we understood each other, the language, we understood it, but it was so different. And I participated in sales calls, and I got some feedback, like, you are very talkative, like you East Europeans tend to answer with very long question, very long answers, and sometimes get around the subject. So if you can be a bit more precise, and I really had to practice a lot. And also when hiring, oh my God, if you don't understand the difference in cultures, then you will hear something that he says, and you will interpret it in the totally wrong way.
Oh, so much this. Even when you work with people and you kind of assume that there might be misunderstandings, it's still, I mean, I record and transcribes meetings because a lot of times in the end of the day we understand completely different things, and then when we discover that we understood completely different things, we need to look at the transcription of the meeting and say, hey, but you said that. Yes, but I actually meant something else, how you didn't understand it. And yeah, it's fun, it's fun. And also the feedback, right? When we say someone, hey, this is crap, go and redo it, we expect people to say, hell, well, it's okay, I'm going to do it. But you cannot say it like that for actually most of the world, right? There is a very few cultures that will accept this kind of feedback as it is on a plain value and won't be offended or at least feel bad about it. And then you need to go and do the cultural things of the feedback sandwich, some praise, some criticism, some praise in the end, and all this stuff. It's fascinating.
So I totally recommend the book. So it's not like an advice. I think it's mandatory. So if you want to have a global company, that it's mandatory to get to know the people that you work with and to get to know your clients in the first place.
Yeah, so here we go. Our best advice for DevOps people in this podcast is read a book about culture.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think, and really, I mean that's a serious advice. I mean, automations that they can be done, but you have to make them specifically for what they requested. And if you don't understand what the engineers requested or your clients requested, then you'll have to rework it.
And that's because DevOps is about people,
Yeah.
not about, first of all, and people are complicated. Machines are much easier.
I totally agree with you on that. So let's get back to the DevOps. What drew you to working in the vast field of DevOps?
No, I mean, for me, it was kind of I've been sucked into it, and by that I mean the tool that started JFrog was written in 2006 as a small open source tool for developers, for Java developers, and we saw the transformation of this part of the industry which was manage like build, software build, and the continuous integration and continuous delivery. All this part, we saw the transformation of this aspect to DevOps while we were in it. So we kind of we experienced it with this journey with the developers and with the ops people when they used what we built in a completely new and different ways. So it wasn't like really choice. It
Mm-hmm.
was something that just happened as the industry transformed. And
Yep.
we obviously always listen to our customers and our users and the early adopters and the thought leaders and try to evaluate if that's really the good thing, or is it really something that we need to adapt and then pass it forward. And I think this is eventually what we did.
Yeah, yeah. So I've asked a lot of people, how did you enter the DevOps field? And all of them said, well, they needed to because they had a problem and they were supposed to solve it. So there, and I guess you can agree with that. When you're in DevOps, you don't end there because you were passionate about let's see how I can help developers. It's not that. You just had to solve some of the issues that you encountered as the team grew, as technology evolved, as business
Here you go,
requirements
right?
changed.
We
Yeah.
spoke about Eastern Europeans who just go and see through my bullshit. It's not about helping the developers, you just need to do it for the money. Yeah, no, I mean, I hope what I do helps, right? And that's the most that we can
Yeah.
hope for. But yeah, in the end of the day, the industry shifts, and if you stay, you cannot stay in place. You have to evolve as
Yeah.
well. You have to get into it just because this is the new reality. My boss, JFrog CEO Shlomi Ben Haim, said a couple of years ago, in a couple of years, every company will be a DevOps company, which
Yeah.
is a paraphrase of every company is a software company. That happened 10 years ago. Now every company is a DevOps company. And he is he's on the money, right? He made his I think the year he kind of targeted was 2023, and I think he's right on the money. But next year there will be no company that can afford themselves not being DevOps.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm I don't know where to position or what to think, about this DevOps, the DevOps future, because I feel that, most of the time, some of the DevOps knowledge that has been in the last few years been resolved by DevOps teams, they are pushed to developers. So kind of we're going back a bit and from a certain point of view where developers need to know a lot of things. So they don't need to know how to code, and I mean they don't need to know how to code, but it's not just that. Developers now, they're also interviewed with knowledge on networking, knowledge on infrastructure as code, and knowledge on Kubernetes. And it's becoming, the standard that even backend developers do have DevOps knowledge. So, and with DevSecOps, which says, well, security is everybody's concern, it's just not the security team's concern. I feel that a lot of DevOps is pushed as a thing that also developers have to do. And one thing that I've heard in bigger companies is that they form teams where there are backend developers and DevOps working together, and they take different tasks. So even in SREs, and they take coding tasks, they take DevOps tasks. So there isn't much difference from the development team to the DevOps team.
Let me take it to a different direction. This obviously correct, right? And when we spoke about DevOps, we spoke about how developers and operations and QA and security and product and business, everything comes together, and everybody should be stakeholder in everything else. And a lot of people heard it a little bit like you said. Hey, I'm a developer now. I write code. This is what I do. Now, suddenly, Roxana comes to me and says, hey, but you also need to know Kubernetes and you need to know network security. And me, like a poor Java developer, say, hey, you know what? No, that's not my job. I don't want to do it. It's too complicated. I don't know. I don't want to know anything about it. I wrote my code. And now it's not my problem. And that created a certain, and I would say pretty significant antagonism towards DevOps in developer community. Developers, a lot of developers feel that the DevOps movement and sometimes the people try to add more work to their plate, something that is they don't consider it as their responsibility. And it's a problem because and the problem is not with DevOps. The problem is with perception and with people not really understanding what it means. Because no one now asks developers to become ops people or to become system administrators. All we need in order to DevOps to work is the culture of working together and the culture of being T-shaped oriented. And what are T-shaped oriented people? It's people, those are people that still have this very deep leg of the T, and this is their core competency. This is what they are do best. They can be developers and they still will ever be developers, but they also should have this head of the T, which is wide, and this is a high level understanding of what is going on in their team, in their product, in their company, in other aspects. How their software is being deployed. Not every greedy detail of Kubernetes, but just the core idea of containers, orchestrator, pods, and how it all works together. The deep understanding of how their software is being accessed. Networking. Again, not the greedy details, but just the idea of service mesh, of ingress controllers, of interconnectivity between microservices. And the same with security. The problem with security is that it's extremely complicated concept, but it's also something that all of us have to understand, at least in the big picture of things. And this is what DevOps is about. It's not about knowing everything of everything. This just impossible. So those DevOps engineers that know everything about everything do not exist. This is a very damaging term for our industry, because when we say DevOps engineers, what we imply is it's someone who is a developer, but also ops person, but also a security expert. There are no such things. DevOps engineers do not exist. We still have the developers, we have the ops people, we have the security people. And what makes DevOps happen is the collaboration between them and the top level understanding of each other's domain. So they all are T shaped people that work together in an empowered teams that makes DevOps happen.
Yeah, I mean, you put it so beautifully. Yeah.
That's because I have a talk about it.
And you do have a lot of talks about it, right? So you have you host the DevOps Speak Easy, right? And you maintain
Yeah.
the JFrog's blog. You also write. So what's your goal with this project?
So the idea is all the same. My holy crusade is a war that I wage against the term DevOps engineer. Because I really willing to die on this hill, because I really think that this is a term that does a very significant damage to our industry, because it assumes something that no one can ever
Right.
reach.
Yeah.
And what came out of using this term is that some kind of a rebranding of ops people into DevOps engineers. So when you look at the industry today and you say, hey, who is DevOps engineer? Okay, those are people who actually work on the infrastructure, work on service stability, and work on the setting up of the DevOps pipelines, right? Those are what we call DevOps engineers. Now, what is the problem with calling them DevOps engineers? The problem is that we create a silo of DevOps engineers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Next thing we know is that we have DevOps teams,
Perfect. Exactly.
and then we know that we have the developer teams and the DevOps teams who don't talk with each other.
And then
So, I can tell you what will happen next. Next, someone smart, maybe Roxana, will come up with a brilliant idea of we need to bring developers and DevOps engineers together. How are we going to call it? DevOps. DevOps is the integration between dev and DevOps. Absurd,
yes,
right?
it is. Yeah. Yeah.
So this is why this term is really damaging, because it devaluates and completely stirs away from the concept of collaboration. Instead, it creates yet another silo.
Yeah.
Yes, it's more modern, it's more fun, it's more technologically advanced silo. Being a developer, DevOps engineer is much more cool than being ops engineer, but in the end of the day, it doesn't solve the problem of us working together.
Yeah, yeah, I totally agree. And I think that you just nailed it when you said that if you end up having teams of DevOps that just kind of impose certain flows and restrictions to developers, and they don't appreciate it, they just view DevOps as kind of kind of bottlenecks. And I guess there aren't a lot of people that know that DevOps is not, it's not some kind of engineer. It's a methodology. It's a culture with which you work. It's not, you have back and front and QA and DevOps. So he's the guy that's in charge with, everything. No, it's a culture. And that's why and I do and I like the DevSecOps. I really love the term because I think it refers to responsibility and analyzing the key. I mean, you don't need to be a security expert. Nobody asks you to do that. But you have to be aware of, It's not just, you can't be in your box, right? And you write, beautifully performant and quality code. It's not just that. You have to be a bit, you have to have some knowledge of what surrounds. Because even as a developer, even if you have a top-notch canary, a rainbow deployment, if you don't know how that works, how are you going to make changes to your code so they are not breaking? You will not be able
Exactly.
to.
Mhm.
Yeah. Perfect. So now this is an interesting term and liquid software, and I know that you wrote a book on it. So, and I would be very happy if you could tell us a bit about what it means.
So this is something that very closely relates to what we just spoke about, right? The idea of liquid software is making sure that your software is updated so smoothly and so frequently that and continuously that it almost feels like the software flows from the producer of the software to the consumer of the software. We see a little bit of that, and now I wouldn't say it's liquid, it's chunky. We see a little bit of chunky software those days with the rise of auto updating software, right? So for example, you have your browser. Do you have any idea what version your Chrome is?
No.
Not really, like
No.
not because it's just getting updated behind the scenes.
Yep.
It still update once in a while. You still have to restart it to apply the updates, and it's still a little bit painful. But it's much less friction full. What's the, I don't know. It's than it used to be, and this is great. Um, uh, 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 but it can be even better. What we envision in JFrog, and as you mentioned, I co-wrote a book about it with two JFrog co-founders, Fred Simon and Yoav Landman. What we envision in JFrog, and that's kind of our company vision, is the world in which you will always be on the edge of software, on the most updated software everywhere. It will be your phone that will have the latest security updates always installed. It will be all the apps on your phone that will always be have the most advanced and cool features. It will be your computer that will always have everything installed and top notch. But it will always also be obviously your servers in the cloud and all the edge and IoT devices, right? So your cameras, your security cameras, won't be one huge mess of insecure and stuff that everybody can just go ahead and use and look into your baby's nursery. Instead, it will always be updated and always have the most up-to-date software. Now, it's not easy to achieve because this is not how this industry was operating for decades. It was the release, the version was always a corner piece of what we do. It was always a very very big deal, and everybody can attest to that.
Yeah.
We know exactly how important it is to get a new version. And a lot of that is from the old ways that we worked in, the waterfall, right? The developing towards some kind of a version milestone that everything was funneled to, and then this release is a big deal. It's also a lot of this is marketing because a release it's a good opportunity to speak about the product, to highlight new features, to make sure that customers get excited about it. Like for example, I don't know if we look at what we have today, I don't know how aware are you about the new features of your browser that get updated. Yes, eventually you will discover them because you use them, and hey, that's something new, this is cool, but you weren't pumped about those versions by marketing
Yeah.
as you used to have when you expected the new version with new features, right?
Yeah.
So there are a lot of problems to overcome in our journey towards liquid software, and all of that is solvable. The technical problems are solvable with Agile, with DevOps. The marketing problems are solvable with switching on how we talk about advertising new features. Instead of speaking about versions, we can speak about features, etc., etc. So there are solutions for all that, but it's something that we need to understand holistically. We need to first understand why we want to do it, and then we need to think about the ways to solve it. And this book is kind of an introduction to the entire idea that will make you think, do we really need it? And then it will make you think how we're going to get there.
Well, thank you, thank you. So, does it also apply to to flows, what internal development flows? Because they always have this issue, and that our podcast is titled it is titled "It Works on My Computer." So developers are experiencing drift from what they should have. They're not working on latest versions. They don't have any auto update. It would be, I mean, imagine a world in which developers work with their code and their infra and their dependencies, not caring, just like they work with their process, not caring about the version because they know they're always up to date. So does this term also refer to internal development processes?
This is a great question, and you nailed it on the head. There is a difference between versions of product and versions of dependencies and artifacts and modules inside the company. There is obviously a very big value of interoperability between different versions of different components within a service. One of the reasons, by the way, we moved into microservices is to get rid of this of those dependence on versions, right? If we do microservices, okay, so step back. There are things that we don't want to care about the version. There are things that we really want to care about the version, right? The more we have of the former, the things that we don't care about the version, the better, because interoperability between versions is hard. If we get rid of that, that would be great. Can we get rid of that completely, entirely for everything? No. Can we try to make it as less as possible? Sure. Now, monolith, getting back to the monolith days. Everything is interdependent with everything based on version compatibility. I have different modules inside my monolith, and I need to make sure that every module works exactly with the right version of every other module. Now, the problem is that um, interoperability and compatibility between modules is almost impossible to get right. And actually, there is a great episode of DevOps Speakeasy podcast with one of the smartest people in the industry of dependency management, Sam Boyer, that explains in detail why dependency management cannot work. Answer, and that will be a spoiler. You remember how we mentioned that people are much worker to work with than machines? Much harder? That's why. That's why we cannot get the dependency management right and probably will never be able to. Which brings me back to the question of how then we do it. How can we manage, build software if we cannot if it's impossible to get the dependency management right? And the answer is depend less. And when I say depend less, what I mean is depend less on particular versions. Instead, depend on the latest version that will always be up to date and compatible, and this is what microservices do. This is why we switch to microservices, because when we speak about microservices, we say, hey, there is somewhere there, I know there is stable API that I can always call. I don't care which version is it. So just make sure it's good, it's latest, it's secure, it has the most features, and I will connect to it. So this is a great example of how liquid software actually helps us to get the problem of binary dependencies. We now use something that we don't care about the version. Is it true? Can we make it like for everything? No, because when we do use modules inside our service, we need to make sure that we use the right version. Did we use log4j with the version that already patched the security vulnerability? You can say, well, use latest version, but that cannot work because we use log4j on the binary compatibility level. We need certain classes, it's Java, right? Certain interfaces, classes. We need to have the right jar file in the class path. That means we need to specify a version. So yes, the versions are important. We cannot get rid of them. When we have binary compatibility requirements, like with the library that we use, we have to use the correct one. But the more we can detach, the more we can decompose, the more we can put into those microservices that we use as a service, and we say, hey, I just want it to be there, the better we are. So here is where the value of liquid software really shines for everything beyond binary compatibility. And with binary compatibility, we do the best we can, we use the best tools available, we use the best versioning practices available, and eventually it will break sometime because people.
So just to summarize a bit, you will never gonna reach 100% in a development flow, for example, because you are required to some of the versions are really important if they're at the platform dependent, or if they have very strict versions that work with certain other components. But if you architect your software, if your architecture for your application is in such way that it doesn't have strong coupling between different microservices, then your life as a developer, and we know that as a DevOps, is going to be much more easy and very much less frustrating.
Absolutely, and this is, uh, and then your service from the producer point of view also becomes much easier to maintain, because then you know that you are not breaking anyone's code next time you want to update your service. Which brings us to the next step. Hey, how frequently should we update the service? The answer will be as frequent as you like. And here, what I like is to be updated as soon as possible, because it allows me better service, because I can add more features, improve my features, work on bugs. It gives me more security because I can patch the security vulnerabilities as fast as possible, and I know that no one is going to use the old, insecure, obsolete, buggy software, because liquid software, the only version that they use, is always the latest and the greatest and the most secure.
Yeah. And in order for that to work, it's not just enough for a single team to be a bit more, to work a bit, to work in versions. Even if they work in versions, it's not just enough for a single team to have that culture. It's also for the third providers, because we see a lot of people that are really afraid of updating. Softwares, platforms, frameworks, operating systems, Kubernetes clusters, everything. And
Your iPhone.
yes, your iPhone. Exactly. And I have to say that I myself, I know how secure, how important security is. But if I have a very important meeting, I will not update my iPhone before that meeting. I have no idea if
Exactly.
it's gonna
Exactly.
break.
Exactly.
So,
Exactly.
so we have. I mean, with breaking changes, there's a issue here. I mean, I think that the world has a bit more. It's better now than before, and breaking changes are announced better. But I think there is still, this mindset that still remains, and I've seen them with developers. some of them really want to update very frequently, and it becomes kind of a business decision with, you have to prioritize that in a certain point. So if the team lead is not with a, it does not approve, taking in each sprint just a moment to see if you can update, because if you don't update with each sprint or monthly at least, then you're going to get, or automatically, best case scenario, then you're going to end with bugs, you're going to end with security issues and flaws. So it's kind of, from a certain perspective, it's kind of a cultural thing. And from the other, you kind of get to go outside the fear of updating. You start with the iPhone first, and then with the framework, with the copy
And
framework.
this is I'm smiling because that's another topic I have a talk about. Uh, the problem with us afraid of updates is trust. We don't trust the software providers to give us something that will just work out of the box. And this mistrust happens because of previous failures in previous updates.
Yeah.
Right? If you're old enough to remember MacBooks circa 2000s, the golden age of the MacBook for developers, I would say, uh, you were never afraid to update your operating system. It was new version, yes, I want it.
Yeah.
Because it always worked. Later, we had a couple of very bad experiences with upgrades, and we don't trust them anymore.
Yep.
Now, a lot of people will be on the previous version for 6 months, for a year, just because they say, "Yeah, I don't want to update yet. I want to make sure they squish all the bugs." Right? So this trust between us, between the software provider and us, have eroded. In order for us to get to liquid software, we need to make sure that we re-establish this trust, that we really have the knowledge that each and every update will work. And the only way to get back this trust is to update more frequently and successfully.
Yeah.
Just a couple of upgrades that everything goes great. Maybe not a couple, but a certain amount of upgrades in which everything goes great. And I am willing to gamble with my next one. You know what I mean? Obviously, there are people who are more risk averse. It will take them more time to trust. But in the end of the day, this is what's happening. Now, what we see is exact opposite. We see a negative feedback loop in which we are afraid we are afraid to upgrade. To update. The vendors will pack more and more features into the next version in order to convince us to upgrade. It will take them more time. The version will be packed with more features, which means more bugs.
Yeah.
The chances of stuff is getting wrong on the upgrade are higher. The upgrades generate more anxiety, and then we upgrade even less frequently.
Yeah.
Right? It's a negative loop. The worse it gets, the worse it's gonna be. Instead, we need to go to opposite direction. We need to go small, very small updates. The chances of breaking stuff is less. And then when we update small incremental changes and do it very frequently, this is how can we gain the trust of our users back. And what happens there, what helps with that a lot, is obviously the cloud and services. Because we are now using a great streaming platform for a recording of this podcast. Do any of us know which version of this platform we are using? We're not. And as long as it works, no one needs to convince us to upgrade to the new version because every time we refresh it, it has a new version. That takes off this pressure of adding more and more features into each and every update because this update can be as small as the provider want it to be. This platform might be updated hundreds times of days, and this is how they manage to maintain a always working software even when we are now risk avert of updating our software. They don't need our permission, so they can push updates which are smaller and smaller inside, which in turn provides better and better software quality.
Yep. And the tendency, I mean, right now, more and more services become as a service, and people are gaining more trust and running a lot of databases, queues, everything. Everything is run as a service now. Environments as a service. This is what Bunny Shell does. It solves, it helps developers in their development flow to get rid of some of the creation of environments, of the drift issues that they have. And they trust you because, first of all, that you have a certification, you have a security certification that attests that you are doing the updates that they need. And they don't need really to, they can get their mind off it. I mean, and there is there I think there is good tendency here, and we'll reach at a point where everything will be as a services. I don't know, everything will be low code, no code. I have no idea for the future or on what that would be, but I think it's going to be a fantastic future. Um, so let's go a little bit on back to DevOps, the DevOps culture, not engineering. So. Do you think that the world needs now more DevOps content? Because I really remember I'm not. I think I've been in this field for 8 years. Like this is when I finished college. But back then there was there wasn't any definition of DevOps, and I'm not sure if there is one now that is correct. You know, I mean, DevOps meant anything and everything. Was it observability? Was it scaling, reliability, flow, CI/CDs, network security, like anything you can imagine, and hundreds of technologies. And there are a lot of podcasts, there are a lot of courses now. You can, certified DevOps. It means you know everything, I guess. So do you think, and I think that a person that is interested in the term can now have a pretty good, they have the materials and what it means. But do you think that there is the need for more content on the DevOps side?
So first of all, I think it's a great question because you trying to say, hey, more content is better, but we are saturated with DevOps content because it's a hype, right? And it's a hype because this authentic need that we spoke about in the beginning of our conversation, the authentic need of the industry, of the business, and of the technical people to make software better, to deliver on time, to work together on making software better, transformed into, hey, this is where the money is, let's get into this. And there is a lot of bullshit out there, right? And I already mentioned like DevOps engineer is a it's bullshit, and it's actually makes more harm than good. And obviously the certifications of how to become DevOps engineer don't make any sense to me. And so the question is not do we need more content, but what content do we need and for whom? And here we have, I think, a couple of very important areas and target audiences that we most definitely need more good content for. The first is the beginners, the people that are get into this industry and they are overwhelmed. First of all, how did this get to this industry? Probably through one of those hype-ish routes, right?
Mhm.
They heard that DevOps engineer is the way to go.
Yeah.
And obviously, they start from the position which already directed to the wrong goal to become this DevOps engineer. So we need a lot of content that talks truth and to power and kind of explains that, hey, you know what? You got this DevOps engineer certification. Just saying, DevOps engineer is not a thing.
Yeah, and it's going to be deprecated in a year because technology
Right,
is shifting.
because actually what you learned is to how to be a Kubernetes engineer, and we don't know how long Kubernetes will be about and what become of it and what it will transform to, and you don't know about DevOps, right? So this is very very important aspect. The beginners, because there is a lot of gatekeeping going on as well. Uh, People who are in the industry and want to keep their position, want to keep their status, they will do a lot of things from changing, from preventing a change. So there is a lot of work need to be done there. Another aspect of very important education, this is also something that we already spoke about, the target audience of developers, because a lot of developers feel that DevOps is something between useless bullshit to, hey, they try to make us work harder. And it's neither of those. So again, there is a lot of things to be told to developers to get them on board with true DevOps and to show them that it's not bullshit, it's not threatening, it's not hard. They are not required to learn tons of new stuff. Instead, all they need to work on mindset, culture, working together, and approaches to software. And again, there is tons of explaining to do there. So it's not whether the world needs new content, is who exactly needs new content and where, and how we make sure that those people get the right message and not the hype bullshit message that a lot of it, too much of it, it's out there already.
Yeah. I do totally agree with you. And I know that you are also a developer advocate. So, what does this mean?
So this is another something that you will, particularly you being from Romania, will enjoy greatly, and that's something that is called the um, the mm, the translator enemy. Translator enemy are words that look like a word in my language, but actually mean something completely different in different language. And advocate is one of those. It sounds very familiar to Russian speaking, Romanian speaking, Hebrew speaking people because it actually means a lawyer in all those languages. And then when I meet native speakers in those languages, they are very very surprised with my title because they know what advocate means. It means a lawyer, and what does it even mean? Developer lawyer? Are you a lawyer? What are you, a counselor? What is going on? And actually, English has a completely different meaning of the word advocate. And in English, advocate is someone who advocates for someone else, for a group, for a community, for a person. And it means that they are there to represent their interest and to care about them, not in court, but in any other mean, right? So, for example, there are advocates for some kind of misfortune community. There might be advocates for misplaced people, for refugees, or any other group. And that doesn't mean that they represent them in court. It means that they try to help them, maybe interact with authorities, maybe find solutions for their problems. Developer advocate is this kind of advocate. It's not a lawyer. It's a representative of developer community, both internal and external. So I represent the developers of JFrog in the outside world in terms that I talk about our technology, about our vision, liquid software, continuous updates, DevOps, and everything else. But not more less important, but even more important, I represent the community of developers or software engineers inside JFrog. I will advocate for their interests with our marketing, with our sales, with our product, I will say, hey, that's not the features that developers need. Instead, they need something else. Hey, we shouldn't send them yet another cold email. Instead, let's engage with them in other ways. And I will say, hey, stop with the cold calls. It's terrible. People are going to hate you instead of what you try to achieve. Let's try to engage them in other ways. In fact, my community has a representative of this organization. Let me try to introduce you, and it will work much better than just a cold call that will just annoy them and won't have any benefit, right? So this is about representation, not about being a lawyer.
I think that, and I do agree with you. Engineers and developers especially are like a kind of a different species. They need someone to explain their feelings and their frustrations and what they feel to the external world. I mean,
That's what I do.
yes, and I kind of feel some. I mean, there are similarities to my role as a CTO, as yeah.
Of course, you do developer advocacy for your company.
Uh,
My role is actually not doing it instead of everybody else. My role is to help everybody else do that.
mm,
Developer relations is something that exists whether you invest in it or not, because developers have feelings toward your company. They might love it, they might hate it, they might not know about it, they might not care about it. All this is a part of developer relations. All we can do as a company is invest in developer relations and make sure that developers have the right feelings toward our company. Now, can you appoint a person that will take care of that? No. You can appoint a person that will try to transform your organization towards this mindset. Now, transforming this organization includes everybody, and leadership the most important of those. So, of course, you do developer advocacy because it starts from the C level, it starts from the CEO, from the CTO, and those people shape how the entire company behaves, which in the end shapes how the community feels about this company. So, yes, developer relations is something that you have to do, and I personally are really glad that you take it as something that is part of your job.
Now that we reached the point in which we talk about developers, let's and just to wrap it up, and also related to the name of the podcast. So one of the things that I've heard in my engineering teams and across multiple engineering teams is this phrase, like, it works on my computer. So this is one, and there are a lot of memes on this, and they're really really great. I mean, there was one with Docker, and there was someone saying, it works on my computer. And the other one said, that's why we created Docker, so we can ship your computer. And I thought it was
Exactly.
great.
Docker, it's exactly what it is. It ships your computer to production. This is spot on. That's exactly what's
Yeah.
happening.
But of course, it doesn't really solve all the issues of it works on my computer. So do you think that what can developers do? Or maybe it's not something that developers can do, so they never have to say this again.
So yes, so what they need to do is DevOps. Um, DevOps is about solving the problem of works on my computer. What does what works on my computer means? It's a silo. I declare my computer edge as a goal of my work. I say, hey, I wrote this code, it works on my computer, I don't care about anything else. This is exactly the developer silo that DevOps and you and me, are fighting against, right? What I'm saying is, on a cultural level, I don't care if it works on your computer. The only quality that matters, the only works that matters is works for the customer, for the user. If it doesn't work for the user, I couldn't care less whether it works on my computer or not. my silo disappears and I look at the big picture of the entire product, the entire library, the entire company, and what really matters if does it work for the user. Now, once we made this mental switch and we don't use this term anymore because no one cares about my computer, then we can ask, okay, how we can make it work in production for the user reliably, repeatably, as good as it works on my computer. And there are a lot of ways to achieve it. And I think that as of today, containers are the key technology in all of them. It starts with how I develop and test on my computers. And here I would say that the key technology of testing on my computer to make sure it doesn't work only on my computer is a library or a tool that it's called test containers. Uh, Test containers allow is, as of today, the golden standard de facto of bringing the end user environment to your computer to verify that it also works there.
Yeah.
This is the way that you can ensure that what you have on your computer will work. Next is the CI/CD. How do you build your software together with everybody else and test them together to make sure that it works not only on your computer but beyond it? And then how do you ship and how your environments, all the rest of the environments, QA, security staging, pre-production, production, how all of them look as for me as similar as possible to production in the end of the day. And we can do a lot of that by, as we just mentioned, shipping your computer all the way to production with Docker. But we come full circle to the culture again. In the end of the day, once you embrace the idea that it works means it works
Yeah.
in production, it means that you as a developer now have responsibility of ensuring that it works in production,
Exactly.
which means we need to test it. The end test, the ultimate test will be, does it work after it is deployed in production? And that means progressive delivery, progressive rollouts, feature flags, A/B testing, being there when it happens, being on call, incident management, all those are now your responsibility. You used to check if it works on your computer. Now you need to check if it works in production.
Yeah. That's really beautifully said. So it's exactly what happened, with the definition of done. You have to set expectations right for what is really done. Done means it runs in production. That's what done means. And we have to set expectation right for what it works mean. Nobody cares that if it works on your computer. Is it working for everybody, for the client, for the production, and for your colleagues? If that is the answer, then so yeah, it works. But if it's your computer, we aren't going to ship that.
Exactly. And this is again what you just said directly is exactly what I'm speaking about in the talk that I mentioned earlier, the DevOps for developers. I speak about how definition of done changed. That's exactly it's almost a perfect quote from your mouth, that something that I was talking about for many years.
Good. So the answer is somewhere in the DevOps culture. So I guess that and I do agree with you that developers and companies, and even at the business level, there will be much more productivity. There will be much more velocity, and all the KPIs that are interesting from the business perspective if the DevOps culture would be more embraced in teams. So, what is your advice for engineering managers to create this DevOps culture in their companies?
So yes, the productivity improvements not only they are in our future, they are already here. we can see, and that's another very important resource that I want to plug. Um, the State of DevOps report. State of DevOps report was originally created by an organization called DORA DevOps Research something something, and then it continued by amazing people, Dr. Nicole Forrest Green and Jez Hamble and others, and today they are the people who run the State of DevOps report are actually Google Cloud. There is actually the survey for this report is happening right now, and you will have all the links in the show notes for both the survey that is run now, and you are welcome to participate. And the previous editions, the 2021 was the latest one of the Dover report, also in the show notes, that you can see, and the findings are really eyes opening. You can see the productivity gains that you spoke about are in the 100 times more. You can see that the elite performers ship hundreds times more frequently, hundreds times more successfully, with 100 times less of regressions comparing to the organizations that are still behind of DevOps. You can see how the industry moves towards towards being good at DevOps from 7% elite performers in 2018 to 26% elite performance year in 2021. The shifts are massive, dramatic. They are happening, and you as the organization cannot allow yourself to stay behind, because you're gonna lose this race.
One thing that I want to really specify here, because you also you did mention DORA metrics, is that Bunnyshell does display the DORA metrics for your team, so that you know what happens there, and you can not only you can see the progress that they are making, and it's
Absolutely,
incredible.
absolutely, and that's yeah. So when you go to this link that you will have in the show notes, that to fill the State of DevOps report, you will have the both the last year report over there to download, and also the transformation in those 4 years that the survey is running. And obviously DORA stands for DevOps Research and Assessment, and I stay corrected of trying to guess what they're just forgot what they stand for. So yes, absolutely, go participate in survey, read the survey result. It's profound.
Yeah. Well, thank you very much for participating. And were all the questions. I had a great time, and I hope that you did as well. And there was a lot of information, and uh, this being my first podcast, I think it was wonderful.
Thank you, Roxana, for hosting me. It was a pleasure. It was great fun, and thank you all for watching, for listening. Please check the show notes. It has the links for everything we spoke about. All the books, all the references, all the talks, everything is in the show notes. Don't miss. Obviously, take a look at Bunny Shell. They do great things, and my Twitter handle is right here. For the audio only is at @jbaruch on Twitter. Follow me for continuous conversation about this and other stuff. Thank you very much, Oksana, for having me. That was fun.
Thank you.